about. There's a standard form search warrant, and the courts will not second guess the officer, nor should they. And they do sign those search warrants routinely. What Mr. Gallegos was referring to is when the defense counsel says, hey, wait a minute, and has a hearing, a motion to quash the warrant, and then it's gone deeper into the facts of it, and then the judge can then decide that no, the warrant wasn't warranted. But no, I wasn't talking about rubber stamping, and I would agree with both Mr. Gallegos and Ms. Jackson that we do have really good judges in this county. But again, it's not their role to second guess the officer that brings them the search warrant, and they're all standard templates. I've read enough of them to know that.
Mr. Hagan, you're the only one that hasn't responded. You have the opportunity.
Why not? It's turned into a panel on 215.
Yes.
I think everything's pretty much been said. I think the gist of the question goes to people. I'm just guessing here that the police are overreaching on 215, and that's a huge issue in Humboldt County. Let's be frank about it. 215 was worded amorphously in the first place. It's been difficult for law enforcement to enforce it from the get-go. The law itself has morphed over time. We had SB 420 put into place, and then, as was mentioned earlier, People versus Kelly took those quantification measures out of it. We're stuck in kind of almost a no man's land. It's very much a twilight zone, Proposition 215. I think what Mr. Gallegos mentioned a moment ago is very important for people to keep in mind. There is a check and balance system that's in place. A judge is bound to exercise their individual discretion very carefully in looking at a search warrant to see if probable cause is present. And occasionally, prosecutors are in the courtroom, in the judge's chambers, when the judge signs it, and there's a check and balance there.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan. We move on to another question. I'm addicted to meth. I am a mother. To support my habit and my child, I sell meth to my fellow addicts. How long do you send me to prison? Ms. Jackson?
Could you repeat that?
Sure.
You might be careful saying that.
I'm addicted to meth. I am a mother. To support my habit and my child, I sell meth to my fellow addicts. How long do you send me to prison?
I would not send you to prison. What I would do is bring these facts before the judge. The judge would take those into consideration because it would be the judge's determination whether or not you would receive probation for your offense, which under the circumstances would sound like it would be absolutely warranted. However, I would state that if you're a mother and you're doing meth and you need the sales in order to support your habit and your child, then that is precisely the situation where there needs to be some intervention. There needs to be both intervention in order to take you off of the habit, and so that you can go on to lead a productive life and to protect your child. We do not send people to prison simply for being addicts. However, one must know that you cannot continue to sell in this community just because of your addiction, and your addiction must be addressed.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Mr. Hagan?
Well, the question didn't have any facts in it, so the answer, of course, is it depends. But I think what we're getting at is, how much would the district attorney try to get, how much prison would the district attorney try to get for the individual? And that, of course, depends on the facts. If you're selling small amounts, particularly if you're a single mother and you're trying to support your child, a great deal of compassion should be brought into the case, and the district attorney is supposed to have compassion in what they do. We're all human beings here. We've all got to face each other one way or another, and we're all supposed to have an obligation to support the community in the best way we can. If you've got a single mother who cannot support herself and her child except through selling methamphetamine, you've got something that's far larger than just a criminal problem. However, if you've got someone in that capacity who's selling large quantities of methamphetamine and sending people and getting them that methamphetamine to children, it's a vastly different situation than small quantities that's only being sold to their friends. So again, it's the facts. What you've got here is really a situation where you've got to look at it, and it's a very tough situation because the impact, of course, is not upon the mother under the fact situation. The true impact here is upon the child, which will suffer enormously in the situation. It's really a lose-lose kind of a situation. This is where our system falls apart. The criminal justice system is supposed to address crimes, but it does not do well addressing things that are really the purview of social workers. This is one of the reasons, the primary reason we have Proposition 36, to deal with people who are addicted to drugs and get caught up in the criminal justice system. So that's the way that we would look at it. We try to steer it that direction, get together the best expertise we can in the county, and fashion before the judge the best type of sentence that would handle the mother in this situation, try to keep her out of prison, try to keep her together with her child and the family intact, and get her free of her addiction. It's the best that I can say.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan. Ms. Bryson?
If she's manufacturing it, she goes to prison. If it's large quantities, she goes to prison. If it's small quantities, she has her child taken from her. She's surrounding the kids with her friends that are all on meth. Did we miss that point? We're talking about a child here. How old is the child? That's important too. If it's young, we need to take that child off her before that child is permanently damaged. If it's a teenager, well, at least maybe they can fend for themselves, but is she giving the teenager meth too? Hello? This is methamphetamine we're talking about. She's a single mom. Well, she might just be a single mom who is now part of the dependency court. She needs to be. She needs to be in the dependency court, working a case plan, instead of just saying, I'm an addict and I'm going to sell to whatever. I mean, she's basically, it's okay to be an addict with a child. No, it's not. So we're talking about dependency court time. We're talking about social worker time. We're talking minors council time. And this is how we stop the cycle. Not by saying, oh, well, she's an addict, Prop 36, but by dealing with it swiftly to protect that child so we don't create another generation of addicts.
Thank you, Ms. Bryson. Mr. Gallegos?
Yes, thank you, Greg. Unfortunately, this is something we do deal with on a regular basis here in Humboldt County, throughout the state of California, throughout our country. But I want to let you know it's not just methamphetamine. It's also alcohol, where we have children that are born with fetal alcohol syndrome. We have children whose mothers, while they're pregnant with them, are taking heroin, are prescribed drugs. Drug use, addiction, and abuse is widespread in our society. And children, when a woman is pregnant, to engage in that type of behavior is completely irresponsible. Having said that, it would similarly be irresponsible unless the facts warrant it to send her to prison. In Humboldt County, the district attorney's office does have to function as a part social worker and direct people to these programs. We have healthy moms here in Humboldt County, and that's a usual process. This woman would be placed on probation. Part of that probation, they would go to healthy moms. They would be required to get training and education to be a healthy mother, to address her addiction issues. Treatment would be a requirement. The idea would be not to take her out of her home, not to take those children out of the home, but to get her treatment so that those children can be made safe. There is also what's known as the DEC, Drug Endangered Children, here in Humboldt County. So clearly, this community and your government is very concerned about this type of behavior. But as all the speakers said, well, most of the speakers, you cannot do greater harm than you seek to fix. So it's a sad part of what we do, and I wish that I never had to see people like that, but we do. Oh, and one last thing. If you are that addicted woman, I recommend that you go to treatment. There are plenty of resources available to you here in Humboldt County. There are government organizations and there are non-government organizations. You owe it to yourself. It's more than just a criminal law issue. It's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallegos. Ms. Bryson?
Okay, I've already spoken, but I'd like to speak again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm ahead of myself. So why don't we do that if you'd like to respond?
Yeah, I was just going to say that Mr. Gallegos touched on a few things. I've worked in dependency law, obviously, and I've been minors counsel, but I've also represented parents. I've represented mothers who have problems with